viewers, I'm your host Uzma Jafri with another episode of South Asia Focus. Let's begin the show. Two dialogues were held regarding the Afghan crisis this week. One hosted by New Delhi with 5 Central Asian nations and Iran and Russia. The second by Islamabad, which declined being part of the Indian initiative and hosted China and the Taliban. While the tone and tenor of both the meetings was expectedly on the similar lines, it was the level of sincerity that set them apart. Not just not joining the Indian call for peace, but holding a simultaneous meeting only confirms what the Pak-China alliance has been working on. The idea is not just to dig in their feet, but not let others who really seek peace and freedom for the war-ravaged Afghans to gain diplomatic access to it and its people.
The third regional security dialogue, with its expanded version that included 5 Central Asian nations of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, along with major regional players, Iran and Russia, was hosted by New Delhi to discuss, deliberate and set a plan of action to assist Afghanistan in restoring peace and balance in coming times. All participating members reiterated strong support for a peaceful, secure and stable Afghanistan. They also emphasized on the respect for territorial integrity of Afghanistan and non-interference in its internal affairs, a veiled comment on Pakistan and China, who have been vigorously trying to expand their footprints under the Taliban regime. They all expressed their concern for the situation that has been spiraling out of control in the past few weeks. From massive food insecurity to the liquidity crisis and the security situation, Afghans have found themselves in deeper troubles since the Taliban captured power. Indian National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, who presided over the meeting, called for a greater cooperation among the members so as to protect Afghanistan from plunging into Taliban 1.0 era.
We all have been keenly watching the developments in that country. These have important implications not only for the people of Afghanistan, but also for its neighbors and the region. This is the time for close consultations amongst us, greater cooperation and interaction and coordination among the regional countries.
The Delhi dialogue echoed the international community's stance, where they underscored the need of an inclusive government that represents the will of all the people of Afghanistan. The 12-point declaration sought immediate financial assistance for the country, a non-discriminatory distribution of aid, and measures to be taken to prevent Afghanistan becoming a safe haven for terrorist groups. It also underlined the key role of the United Nations in order to prevent the humanitarian crisis in the country. Member states also committed to intensify their actions at both individual and multilateral level to prevent all forms of crisis that might emerge from Afghanistan in coming times.
А также будет способствовать скорейшему установлению долгосрочного мира в этой стране. Многосторонние встречи секретарей Советов Безопасности по афганской проблематике являются важным форматом, позволяющим на самом высоком уровне обсудить весь комплекс проблем, связанных с развитием ситуации в Афганистане, а также выработать практические меры по противодействию вызовам и угрозам, исходящим с афганской территории.
Another similar event was held in Pakistan's capital, Islamabad. And since the prime objective of Pakistan for years has been to upstage India and Afghan matters, there was no surprise when it was held immediately after the Delhi dialogue. Pakistan believes that its deep desire of converting Afghanistan into its protectorate has a major obstacle in India. it has been consistently hatching anti-India diplomatic designs with its so-called all-weather ally China. Not to forget, it has done nothing concrete or commendable vis-a-vis Afghans since the Taliban swept to power in August. It's all been rhetoric and no real assistance. But the question that arises in such circumstances is if such insincerity and dishonesty will continue to be employed by Pakistan and its allies, then how will Afghanistan, a state that stands on the brink of collapse, will come out of the crisis? Will the international community remain a mute spectator? Will the US become more assertive? Will Russia call out Pakistan? Or these meetings will just remain a symbolic exercise in the face of rapidly growing misery in Afghanistan?
Moving on. Farmers are out on streets in the island nation of Sri Lanka demanding the lifting of a ban on the chemical fertilizer import, which they say has massively affected their livelihood. They have been holding rallies for the past several weeks, calling the decision anti-farmers. The Sri Lankan government had imposed a blanket ban on the fertilizer import in May, calling it destructive to the health of the people of the nation, and had urged the farmers to switch to organic farming, which the farmers say is not only expensive but low yielding.
Thousands of farmers have taken to streets in the farmland districts of Sri Lanka at a time that usually marks planting season for the rice farmers in the country. They carried symbolic coffins reading "The Death of Farming" and urged the government to import adequate fertilizers so that both their crops and livelihood could be protected. In May this year, the Rajapaksa government had announced a ban on all imports of chemical fertilizers, including pesticides, weedicides and fungicides. The government defends its decision, saying it wanted to promote healthier agriculture practices and wanted to put the sector on a more sustainable footing. The farmers, however, complain they neither got the government instruction nor assistance in order to switch to the mode they were asked to.
ඉතින් අපි පාරම්පරික කුඹුරු ගොවියෝ ඉතින් ඒවා තම සමන්ගේ කුඹුරු තියෙනවා සේරම කරගෙන යන්නේ මේ අවදියේ ඉතින් පොහොර ප්‍රශ්නේ තමයි ගැටලුවකට තියෙන්නේ පොහොර දැන් අපිට ලැබෙනවා ඒ ලැබුණොත් දානවා නැතිනම් ඉතින් ඒ විකල්පයක් නැහැ වෙන අපි කොම්පෝස්ට් පොහොර හදාගන්න අපිට දැනුමකුත් නැහැ.
As a result of the government call, farmers are planting less than usual. Farmers Association and agriculture economists say this phenomenon, under which people across the country are planting less, could bring down annual paddy yield by 40% this year. The agriculture sector of Sri Lanka contributes 7% to the $80 billion GDP of the nation, and a significantly low produce can further damage the economy that has already been in troubled waters in the COVID times. They have also sounded alarm bells about the impact it will have on the food security policy of the country.
Thanks to Green Revolution, a lot of people talk about negatives. Fine, keep those negatives aside. The positive impact is that we are being able to feed our nation. Now this decision is going to reverse that, and that worries me. That worries all the scientists, based on fact and figures, based on science, not based on myths. That's why I'm against this.
In response to the demonstrations that are growing by the day, the government as of now has made some course corrections. This month, it has imported limited amounts of potassium chloride and liquid nano nitrogen bottles, both used during the rice growing season from India. Another container of China had been returned for Beijing's material was found contaminated. And the government has now said that it was worried about the indiscriminate use of the fertilizers and never intended to dent farmers' income and livelihood.
So at that time, the right option was to ban that much of protest, right? the health sectors, all people, even everybody against what is this chemical fertilizer is doing. It is not the harm of a chemical fertilizer, it is the way we have used it. Or best alternatives are not either used or not popularized. That is the very unfortunate situation.
Nearly 2/3 of the country's 22 million people are dependent on agriculture. Normally, some 2 million Sri Lankan farmers cultivate about 700,000 hectares of paddy between October and March. Experts opine that Colombo must address the issue immediately and import fertilizers in higher quantities from neighboring India if they want to prevent an agriculture crisis.
Moving on. Over 40 people died in India and Sri Lanka this week after heavy rains in the southern Indian states and the island nation triggered floods, landslides and all other sorts of deluge-induced problems. While the large part of the state capital of southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu was inundated for days, Sri Lanka bore the major part of the brunt, with more casualties reported from the island. The situation is gradually normalizing, but not before doing massive destruction to the lives and livelihood of people.
Incessant rainfall brought Indian metropolitan city Chennai to a standstill as water entered residential areas, hospitals and government offices. Heavy rains across southern India have killed at least 16 people, with weather forecasters expecting the downpours to ease in the next few days as people pumped out the deluge. As per the data provided by the authorities, around 237 houses, 1,146 huts were damaged and 157 animals also died. Even the emergency services suffered a halt and schools and colleges were shut after the rainfall hit India's auto manufacturing city.
वो ब्लड टेस्ट लेने के लिए इधर आया हूँ, देखता हूँ तो पूरा पानी पानी है, उधर मेन रोड भी पानी पानी है, गाड़ी घोड़ा भी कम चल रहा है, खाने पीने में भी तकलीफ है, सब चीज़ में प्रॉब्लम है.
Meanwhile, in the Sri Lankan town of Negombo, submerged in knee-deep floodwaters, even as Sri Lankan weather forecasters expected the recent downpours to ease in the next few days. A large number of roads were inundated by floods and houses and buildings partially submerged. The rains have killed 25 people in Sri Lanka, most of whom drowned, while landslides injured 5 and more than 200,000 people were affected. Although the season brings predictable high rainfall, the residents said the pattern was unusually different and they couldn't prepare for this disaster.
මෙදා පාර සාමාන්‍ය අසාමාන්‍ය විදිහට තමයි මේ වතුර පාර ආවේ. සාමාන්‍ය වෙනදාට පොඩි වැඩිවීමක් වෙන්නේ නිකන් සොරවුවක් කඩාගෙන ආවා වගේ එකපාර වතුර ලයින් එක ඇවිල්ලා කරලා සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම මේ පාර දිගේ ගඟ වගේ ගල්ලා පිරුණා.
India's northeast monsoon usually runs from October to December, bringing heavy rain, particularly to the south. India receives most of its precipitation from 2 monsoon seasons. While 75% of the rain comes from the southwest monsoon, the northeast monsoon covers the remaining. The northeast monsoon rains are triggered by changes in the wind patterns from southwesterly to the northeasterly as the southwest monsoon recedes. This year, the intensity and frequency have increased due to the creation of a low-pressure area in the Bay of Bengal and depression in the Arabian Sea. Since the start of the northeast monsoon in October, Tamil Nadu and Puducherry regions have experienced about 43% excess rainfall.
And now, in our section of Asia this week, the stories from across the continent that hit the headlines this week.
Kazakhstan is struggling to meet the energy needs of its booming cryptocurrency mining industry, which is flourishing thanks to cheap power and an exodus of crypto miners from neighboring China. The Central Asian nation of 19 million has become the world's second biggest Bitcoin mining location after the United States in recent months. Now the government is trying to decide how to tax and regulate the largely underground and foreign-owned industry. Kazakhstan's BTC-KZ mining company said it already faces electricity cuts, including days when power supply is entirely halted. Local mining farms are mostly powered by aging coal plants, which themselves, along with coal mines and whole towns built around them, are a headache for authorities as they seek to decarbonize the economy. Crypto mining, the energy-intensive computing process through which Bitcoin and other tokens are created, is seen by many as hurting global environmental goals. The Kazakh government plans to crack down first on unregistered grey miners, who it estimates might be consuming twice as much as power the white or officially registered ones. The Energy Ministry says grey mining may be consuming up to 1.2 gigawatt of power, which together with white miners' 600 megawatt comes up to about 8% of Kazakhstan's total generation capacity. The autumn season has arrived in Japan and the color of trees is changing from green to yellow and red. This has attracted tourists as the beauty around mountains poses as the most beautiful natural scenery in the world. A large number of tourists in Nikko area of Tochigi Prefecture gathered at the observatory to get a perfect view. It offers a beautiful sight of Lake Shuzhenji. During autumn, Mount Nantai and the lake view are popular sightseeing spots in Japan. Heiko-dejima on the lake is called Boot because of its shape, and the colorful scenery can be seen from this observatory. The road leading to Lake Shuzhenji is named Iroha Slope. Many people travel to different spots to get perfect view of the autumn leaves. They even enjoy the nature's beauty while traveling in buses and cars. Nearby the lake, there are several shops and facilities for the visitors.
やっぱり家の中にいるとね、うち子供もいるんで、やっぱ家の中ばっかりだとね、運動不足だとかね、ストレスだとか、やっぱ外に来て自然を見るとね、気持ちもすっきりするし、やっぱ心が洗われますね。私若い頃から山登りが好きだったんですけど、やはりどこ行っても日本はまず、ゴミがないのは当たり前ですけども、四季それぞれいいところがありますよね。春の花も綺麗ですけども、やっぱり秋の紅葉が一番綺麗で、高さ登っていくにつれてだんだん赤が強くなる、黄色が強くなるとね、下に行けば緑がいいと、やっぱそういう色がなんていうんですかね、たくさん色があって、綺麗だというところですかね。
People around the world are praying for the end of coronavirus pandemic as the scenic beauty of Japan is waiting for them. The colorful leaf scenery moves from north to south of Japan, where the temperature gets cold. Tokyo is one of the world's most fascinating and high-tech city with over 12 million population. Recently, it hosted a medical devices and hospital equipment expo called Medical Japan 2021. Sophisticated hospitals, nursing care, clinics, pharmacies and infection control products were exhibited. It was the first exhibition organized since the coronavirus outbreak. Disinfectants, anti-spray products, hygiene products were put on display as a countermeasure against the coronavirus pandemic. This is a splash prevention panel to protect from COVID-19 virus. The suction device displayed can be used in hospitals, hotels and offices.
パネル一体型の飛沫吸引装置になっております。こちらのアクリルパネルから空気ですとかエアロゾルを吸い込みまして、気体の方に流しまして、こちらで UVC を照射することによりウイルスですとか菌を抑制いたします。 従来型ですとアクリルパネルの方に飛沫ですとかエアロゾルがこう乗り越えてしまって反対側の方に落ちてしまうんですけれども、こちらの穴の部分から吸引することによって向こう側に飛沫を飛ばさない目に見えた安心をご提供できる商品になります。
This is a container house for RT-PCR inspection. It is equipped with quick-acting unit and a device that cools the temperature using water. For air cleaning, silver ion and ultraviolet sterilization technology, products were also put on display. Medical companies are using their know-how to create effective countermeasure against COVID-19.
Moving on. The mere mention of Chhath brings emotions to millions of Hindus, for it is their most sacred and revered festival. While Hindus across India and Nepal celebrate Chhath festival with gaiety and fervour, the most spiritually captivating and devotional pictures are witnessed in Indian state of Bihar. Let's have a look at how the two countries celebrated the festival, where they worshipped God's Son and prayed for the well-being of their families. Dressed in their traditional dress, these women stood in ponds holding a basket full of offerings to the sun god as they celebrated Chhath Puja. Chhath is dedicated to the sun god and is a way to show adoration and gratitude to the sun for being the source of life on earth. Celebrated on the 6th day of lunar month of Kartik, Chhath falls days after Diwali, the festival of lights. During the festival, women take a dip in rivers and water bodies, offer prayers to the sun and his wife Usha, and observe fasts.
छठ मनाउनु पर्छ, छोरा छोरी बुहारी सबैजनाको लिए, गर्जियनको लागि, परिवारको लिए सबैजना सुखी परिवार रहो, भाइ भतिजा सबैजनाको लागि छठी माताको पूजा गर्छ, सूर्यदेवको पूजा गर्छ, त्यही पूजा हुन्छ। छठी मैया हामीलाई भुखै आज दिनभरि बस्नुहुन्छ, रातिमा बस्नुहुन्छ, एक ठोप पानी उनी केही खादैन। हिजो पनि भुखै बस्नुहुन्छ, सबै मनाउनु पर्छ छठी माताको व्रत।
It is a 4-day-long Hindu festival celebrated as Nahai Khai, Karna, Evening Arg and Morning Arg. Nahai Khai is observed on the first day of Chhath Puja, where the families carry out a massive cleanliness drive at their homes and women consume food without garlic and onion. Nahai Khai is followed by Karna, which is the second day of the grand festival. To mark the festivities, women prepare various delicacies like chana dal, pumpkin rice, kheer, thekua and much more. It is believed that people worship the sun to ensure the longevity and prosperity of family members, friends and beloved ones. The holy dip, fasting and abstinence, maintaining cleanliness are the rigorous rituals followed at the time of Chhath.
आज के दिन होता है जैसे कि नहा खा, आज से शुरू हो गया। आज का जो है ना हम लोग मतलब एंट्री हो गए, आज से हम लोग छठ के आह्वान में। आज के बाद हम लोग का 3 दिन 4 दिन का व्रत रहेगा, मेन व्रत आज से स्टार्ट हो गया है।
There are several Hindu festivals celebrated with great enthusiasm and devotion in both India and Nepal. The cultural similarities bind the people of two neighboring countries since ages. According to Vedic astrology, Chhati Maiya or Mother Chhath protects the offspring and provides them longevity. With that, we come to the end of this week's episode. See you next week. Goodbye and take care.